So today I'm talking with Tamara Harding. Tamara is a wood artist out of Jamaica. And I'm going to turn it over to Tamara to talk a little bit about how she made it on this journey of being a self-taught wood artist. Go ahead, Tamara.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you so much for having me and for choosing me for this episode. I really appreciate the time. So just quickly, I started a family very young and never really got a chance to do me in my 20s. And then in my 30s, I started to question, why was I born in Jamaica? Why is Jamaica such a large, plays such a large role in my life? I hear the national anthem and I tear up every single time. And you know, why does Jamaica play such a massive role in my life? Why was I born in a time where, you know, we had the hippies in the 70s, and then we had that whole movement in the 80s, and then in the 90s technology started to take over. And I do feel like that anybody born in the 70s are so super lucky, because we were born into a time where we could play outside until 10 o'clock at night, barefoot, ride our bicycle without helmets, eat nuts, drop out of trees. You know, really, yeah, really like experience life.
Yeah.
You know, we never had junk food. We never had all of this materialism that we have. We certainly didn't have the internet, cell phones, all of that. And so we grew up in a really, really cool time. You know, the war was finished. You know, so we were in a very interesting time to be born. And yes, we did have some political turmoil. Yes, I do remember, you know, certain things taking place growing up in Jamaica, hearing things, seeing things, being exposed to things that certainly people in North America would never have been exposed to. But I learned that to be very important, because when I went away to Canada and did my tertiary education there, I was so much more exposed than everybody that was there that was from the US or Canada. I knew so much more about life and the world than they did. And strangely enough, they were so sheltered where we were so exposed, even having come from such a small island. It's very, very interesting dynamic. In any case, so I started to question what all of this meant for me. And I, from a very young age, felt like I was here to do something. And I always felt that from I was a very young. I had some very vivid dreams that still impact me today. You know, when I was 8 and 9, and so when I got into my 30s, I started to really look at life in a different way. What is my purpose? Why am I here? And I promised myself that by the time I was 40, that I would have those answers. So now I'm 39 and a half, almost 40, and I don't have the answers. And I own and run an advertising agency that was doing very well. I had the Appleton account, I had NCB key card, Coca-Cola, Wendy's, pretty significant accounts, and it was doing very well, but I was not living out my purpose. That was certainly not what I was intended to do.
And
so
how did that manifest in your life though? Like, how did you know that? Like, what were you feeling?
Okay, that's a good question. I started having really bad anxiety attacks. And looking at other people and seeing them, especially women, seeing them in their lives every day, living out what they were intended to do. And I'm looking at them, I'm like, what do they possess that I don't have, that is allowing them to live out their purpose and their dreams, but it's eluding me. And so, you know, I did a lot of work on myself. I did, you know, wellness retreats. I had energy readings. I did what's called NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. I had a life coach for 6 months who definitely 100% played a major role in helping me transition. That was probably the clincher. And so I started to do a lot of work on myself, maybe towards the mid-30s into that period of turning 40. And my life coach started with me in March of 2014 for 6 months. And I had the aha moment in December of that year that I was going to transition into, I knew I wanted to create and design. I just didn't know what medium. And one of the energy readers that I had in the summer of that year said to me, I'm going to ask you one basic question. What if there's anything that you could do in this lifetime? Just don't think of any barriers, any blocks, or any money, just whatever you could do right now in your life that would make you wake up every morning where you're singing, your heart is soaring and you feel so alive, what would it be? And without hesitation, I said, designing and creating. And he said, that's it. He said, your whole aura just changed. He said, that's what you're going to do. And I said, that makes no sense. What am I designing and creating? And he said, you don't worry about that. You just keep asking the questions and you will get the answers. He said, but you have to be still and you have to listen and hear the answers when they come to you. So one of the critical things is I quit the agency, gave all my clients notice, and cleared my space. And that was so important because when you have a lot of noise coming in from all different angles, it's very hard for you to hear things that you're asking, right? And so I cleared the space, I cleared the energy, because one of the options was to, instead of closing the agency down, is just hire a manager or sell it. And I said, no, that's still going to keep me tied to this company that I've built from scratch. I need to separate and end it so that I can have the energetical space that I need. And it worked. And so I asked, what am I intended to do with this creativity and this love and passion to be able to ideate and visualize and bring to life? What does that mean? And my great-grandfather was a shoe manufacturer in Jamaica. He had a large shoe manufacturing company, and they supplied a lot of the boots and stuff for World War II. They created a whole sandal line, and so I was like, do I get back to creating and designing shoes? It's my family legacy. Do I start that back? And I really didn't have any answers. And then in November of 2014, first of all, that was the year of Chick V. So I got Chick V really, 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 really bad. And it knocked me over. I was one of the worst cases of Chick V. But it allowed, that downtime allowed me to just be, right? And so in November of that year, I was invited to, I would make Christmas decorations for family members for years. And I was invited to do Christmas decorations to put in this fair. Now, the fair was a health fair, not a Christmas fair. So I went about, and my husband was traveling a lot at the time, made him go to Michael's and Walmart and Target and buy all of these things for me. And I set about and I made about maybe 3 dozen of these Christmas trees. They were basically out of paper and they were, done up really cool. And I took them to this health fair and not one of them sold. Now, the reason why I decided to do this in the first place was to get my creative juices flowing. So I took them there and none of them sold. And I'm like, oh my God, what have I done? I spent all this money, this is my first go at doing something creative and selling it. And it's a full failure, full flop. And I was like, you know what? I've spent so much money. There must be another way. And I went on to Pinterest and I looked up Christmas decorations, and all of these really cool wood decorations came up, wreaths and trees and all sorts of cool stuff. And I said, you know what? I had a plum tree in the backyard. And at the time, before the plums come up, they loses all of its leaves. Yeah. So I had all these really cool, thin, small branches on this tree. So I got a saw. I had help. I got started cutting down as much of the branches, the ones that didn't have any blooms coming up on them. And I set about making all of these really cool wreaths and these stick trees. And then I put them up for sale, and then every single one of them sold. And if I could have made 300 more, they would have sold. And that's when I had the aha moment that I would use wood as my medium. Now, I could have easily just packed up and been like, this is stupid. Let me just, get back to corporate. And having had that aha moment, I realized that there were so many signs that had been coming along the way, but I was so busy that I couldn't see them. So I'll give you a quick example. About 5 years prior to that, I was driving along the road, and just very close to the Youre campus was this massive tree that JPS had cut because it was interfering with the power lines. And the RADA guys are good friends of mine. And I called them up and I said, I need a favor. I want you to meet me on the side of the road with your chainsaws. I want to rescue and take this tree off of the side of the road. I have no clue of what I'm going to do with it, whatever. So I did, and they helped me. And we did about 3 or 4 trips. And I had those tree trunks sitting at the side of my house for 5 years. I didn't even remember about them. And another example is I had trimmed a pui tree in my yard. And there were all of these, the whole trunk was hollow on the inside. And I asked RADA to slice them up for me, and they did. And I made this really cool art mural on my wall in my house with all of these wooden pieces, still not cluing in, even having said I want to create, what am I going to create with, looking at this wall every day, did not connect the dots.
Right.
And so it was just like, it was in front of me the whole time, and I just never saw it. And I tell this story all the time. I see the little guardian angels on my shoulders like fall over and be like, finally, she's figured out what we've been trying to tell her for years, And so that's how I got into the whole aha moment of it being wood,
Isn't that interesting? Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, you go.
No, I was just going to say, like, one of the questions that kept popping up is, were you creating all along? And you were, in some way, shape, or form, but you never actually saw that as a way, as a way forward, like as a career path or a purpose path. You just thought it was some other thing that you did. And I wonder about that division or the separation of what we do that brings us joy and what we do to support ourselves that bring us money.
And this is part of where life and our education and how we're brought up fails us, because we are taught that in order to be successful, we have to be something like a doctor, lawyer, businessman, and accountant, work in an office, 9 to 5, work hard, hustle, all of these things. And as a Jamaican, we are natural born hustlers. There's very few Jamaicans that only do one thing, right? And so it's in our DNA to hustle. And what we're not taught is that you can fulfill your soul's purpose and make money doing that. It's like it's one or the other. And I have made more of an income doing what I love than in all of my years working in corporate combined together.
Really?
Right? Yeah. And I worked from I was 20. So for 20 years, from 20 to 40, working in corporate versus 40, I really launched at 41, which is now coming up to 6 years this November. So in the 6 years, I've made more than what I made at 20 years combined, doing what I love, being my own boss, and there's an ebb and a flow, and you get lost sometimes, but you have to learn how to rein it back in. And for the most part, loving what I do. And so there is this thing that we're taught in school. We have to conform, we have to sit, we have to, put our hands up. We can't be an individual. We have to, be a collective. You're sheep, you're not, the lion. And it's kind of like, you know, especially for women, if you start to show signs of leadership, you're difficult, you're aggressive,
Yeah.
you know, you are all of these things that
You're a
they put you
bitch.
in.
Yeah.
You're a bitch.
Yeah.
You know, who the hell do you think you are?
Mhm.
And so you have, you know, as a woman, you have a lot of current that you have to swim against, you know, especially for you when you become a wife and a mother as well, and you add those elements to the mix, you know. And so I, I can tell you that hands down, part of my part of it for me is my Jamaican rebelliousness,
Mm.
right? There's a certain element of being a rebel once you're Jamaican, and you can use it for good and you can use it for bad.
Right.
And you know, my husband says it in a way, it's like we don't have a sense of scale as a Jamaican. We don't have a sense of scale. If we want to go big, it's just as easy for us to make one step as it is for us to run a marathon,
Mm.
because for us it's one in the same.
Mhm.
And so it's kind of like that with me. Like I don't see it as, oh, I've done this tremendous thing where I've stepped out the box and I've, you know, uh, found my purpose at really 40, between 40 and 41. And I'm, you know, creating this business from total scratch with, by the way, I took all the money I made from the Christmas decorations, and that's what I started my business with.
Your seed
So
money.
I never, right, I never took out a loan. I never borrowed money from family. I never did anything like that. I took all of that, the proceeds of that, minus what I spent on the Christmas decorations, and bought my first set of tools.
So this is like
So
the true spirit of organic growth.
total organic growth,
Mm.
no training, no capital, no inheritance from an uncle or a family member that did woodworking before, where I stepped into their workshop.
Mhm.
Nothing like that. When I tell you from total scratch, I'm talking from total scratch. When I first started out, I was underneath 4 black olive trees in my front yard. And then when it started to rain, we used to pack up everything and run inside with them. Then we take them back out. And then eventually I migrated into our tarpaulin, and then went from a tarpaulin into a proper zinc shed.
This
And
is
then
still at
now
your
I
house?
still at the house,
Wow.
still at the house. Then I went from that into a large facility with 3 containers that I had bought, and relocated the workshop to Trelawney. And everything paid for itself.
Mhm.
So as I made one floating shelf, I took all that money and I went and I bought another tool, and I just kept tooling up, tooling up, tooling up. And I didn't know anything, so I had to basically be figuring everything out on my own. Now I am dyslexic, right? And one of the amazing things about people who are dyslexic is they see situations in a different way.
Mm.
So the average person may go from A to B in a straight line. A dyslexic person will go from A to B in a, around, and they'll figure out another way to get to B. So what that did for me was, I know that I wanted to create this live edge furniture, this live edge table. I wasn't trained how to make this live edge table. So instead of going from A to B in a straight line, I figured out how to get from A to B using my own way. And that's how I've been able to do what I do. It's because my brain takes a different approach to it.
Right.
So even when I join large woodworking forums and I'm part of all of these groups, a lot of these men that are seasoned woodworkers that have been in this business for years are looking at me like, how the hell are you doing that? I don't have any equipment. I don't know how to use them.
Mhm.
Right? So every single thing I make is with hand tools. Every single thing I design and create is with hand tools, which is electric hand tools. So I don't have any machinery. So when they have these big, massive workshops with these huge $10,000-$20,000 machines that they're pushing these big slabs through, and I'm getting the same results with my little hand tools, they're just like, what is this chick up to?
Right. And again, the Jamaican way of doing things is to just get it done with what you have versus like,
No sense of scale.
yeah,
We
exactly.
just
He's
know we
exactly
got to
right.
do it. We just do it. you know,
Right.
and it's, what's the big deal? I don't see what like, I honestly don't see what the big deal is. Like, this is my livelihood. If I want to create a 19-foot table out of one slab, I'll just get it done. Like, it's not, it's not a big deal.
It goes back to what you're saying too about just where knowledge and training can fail you because
Totally.
it tamps down the innate knowing.
Correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that, see, I just got goosebumps when you said that, because that's pretty much what happens to everybody in their life.
Mhm.
We're so trained to think a certain way. And another thing with dyslexic people is that they're natural problem solvers.
Mhm.
So we solve problems quite easily, where as an average person that may be a little bit difficult. And worse, if you're in an education system that does not teach you how to problem solve, then that whole aspect of life doesn't exist for you.
Right.
And we can see it. I can tell you, as an employer here, a big part of the issue for us is that people coming out of school don't know how to solve issues. They don't know how to solve problems. If you tell them to go from A to B, they can do it easily. They can follow instructions so well. But
Mhm.
you ask them to think on their own and figure things out, and they can't. And this is going back to like a PEP and a GSAP, where kids are just taught to, you just need to
Standardized tests.
SWAT.
Mhm.
You need to know what all the prime ministers names are of all the different islands. What name the cricket team in the West Indies cricket team? When was their last champ? Just all of these statistics that are irrelevant to their life. They're
Mhm.
not taught emotional intelligence. They're not taught how to problem solve. And so, it's the system that's failing them. And then when they get to my age or younger and they're trying to now figure out their purpose, it's impossible for them. They're physiologically challenged that way.
Right. It's interesting that you are making your way in a field that's dominated by men. They talk about this time being a time of the rise of the feminine. And here you are in a very masculine space, doing things in a way that is inherently feminine. There is no structure to it. It's flowing. It is about problem solving. It's like this is the space that you have created for yourself. But looking back in hindsight, do you think like, oh my God, wow? Or do you think, what do you think about where you are right
Um, yeah, I definitely think, oh my God, wow. Because if I had visited my past self,
now?
even 7 years ago, and showed them a window into what I was doing and what my life would be like now, I'd have said, I'm not going to curse. That's
Yeah.
impossible.
You can totally
I would
curse.
have said, I would have said, that's fucking impossible.
Right.
Like, there's no way. That is not you.
Mm-hmm.
And especially because I knew that I had been wanting to figure it out for so long, and it not being able to come to me. There would have just been absolutely no way that I would have foreseen all of this growth in such a short time, and to be where I am now. Even when I first started out, I would never expected that I would have been where I am already in such a short space of time,
Yeah.
and it's really it's been effortless.
Mm-hmm.
And in part of the journey, what I've learned is, so last year in COVID, I had a suspicion or a feeling that something big was coming.
Before
Um,
COVID or during COVID?
just when it started to brew in China,
Yeah.
when we first started to hear about it, and I got wind of what was happening in China, I had a feeling that it was going to affect or impact us tremendously.
Okay.
Right? Because we've had SARS and MERS and other things, but for some reason, this felt very different. And I sat my guys down in February and I said to them, guys, I think something big is coming. And I want you to promise me that every time you get paid, you're going to put some money aside. Just trust what I'm telling you. Don't think I'm crazy, but just put even $1,000, $2,000 aside. Just do that for me. And of course, they thought I was crazy. And then fast forward a month and a half later, and we're now in full lockdown. I went into a full downward spiral and full panic. And I caught myself. And one of the beautiful things about being in Trelawney is that I'm surrounded by nature. I'm surrounded by, beautiful, majestic animals, cows, donkeys, horses, sheep. And I really rely on that energy to serve me. And I remember being in the Martha Brae River where I swim every day. And I remember standing in a part of the river talking to myself. And if anybody had passed, they'd be like, Lord, she gone off her head. I mean, I was like, my hand flailing and I was, I was chatting to myself. But basically, I was like, no, I was talking myself down off the ledge. And I said, no, money is still out there. People are still going to have money. COVID is not affecting the money. It's not making the money sick. Money is still there. Clients are still there. And I just kept affirming, they're going to spend money with you. They're going to spend money with you. You're still going to do well. Because my panic was not so much about losing business or not making money. My panic was more about, I have guys who rely on me for their livelihood. Right. And that was really like, I have a huge burden when it comes to making sure that they are okay. And that was really what was driving that panic. I don't create what I do, and I don't do what I do for money. The money comes. I never have to worry about that part. For the first time, I was worried because of them. So I just affirmed that everything was going to be okay. And at the same time, I had to move from where I was in Trelawney. And so compounded was this whole entire, I have to move. I have 4 weeks that I have to move. Because where I was staying, had my workshop set up, the gentleman was subleasing the land to me, and his lease arrangement was expiring in a month. And the landlord said to him, "You're breaching your contract. You're not supposed to be subleasing to anybody." And in order for him to renew his lease, I had to leave. If not, he would have lost the lease. So I was under pressure. Like I had to get out of there. And so it's not an easy task. Where am I going to move to? I love the area that I'm in. And I just said, nope, you're not going to panic. You're going to be okay. Everything is going to be fine. And I remember that there were a couple of clients that wanted pieces from me. And I had been kind of hesitating. And I said, you know what? I'm going to send them estimates tonight. And I sent all of them estimates, and every one of them approved their estimates and paid me. So by the following week, I had all of this money in my account that allowed me to basically relocate my workshop in like 3 days. Right now, that to relocate my workshop meant moving 3 massive 40-foot containers and about 20 truckloads of wood into somewhere where I didn't even know existed yet. Right. So the money was there. I'm good. I know I got that part covered. Where am I moving to? Again, I just affirmed it and I released it. And I never once went into panic, into worry. I never tried to own the process. I never tried to control the process. I just let it go and I let the universe just take over. And within a week, I had a location much closer to where I live. I got 8 acres. And it's just the most beautiful space.
So
and
wait,
so
I want to interrupt you there for a little bit, because letting go of the process, what did you do in between when you let go of the process, if anything, and when you happened upon the new place?
Just kept affirming that everything would be okay. Just constant affirming, constant belief, having a clear vision. Is very important. So because I go up in my head a lot, and I'm always visualizing. I'm a visual learner. You
Mhm.
can't tell me something and I can't hear something and I remember it. I have to see it. I
Mhm.
have to experience it. And so I just kept visualizing where I was going to be. I visualized how seamless the move was going to be.
Mhm.
And I was doing that every day and just affirming it's all going to be good. It's all going to be good. And just putting a good vibration out there, good energy out there.
Right.
Um, and and it works for me 100% of the time.
Mm.
But it's a process that I've had to teach myself in this journey into this whole woodworking and this whole, feeding my soul's purpose.
Mhm.
It's something that I have discovered and learned how to embrace it and use it. And it works like a total and absolute charm.
It's like a superpower.
Now, it's like a superpower.
Mhm.
Where it gets tricky, because I'm in a tricky phase again, is knowing where you want to be.
Mhm.
So let's say in 6 months from now, I right now I'm in a transitional stage as well, right? Because I have an opportunity to um so I still had my Kingston workshop, even though I relocated to Trelawney, I still had a Kingston base. And I'm in an opportunity now where I can move that Kingston base into a facility that would allow for massive expansion.
Mm.
And it's something that I've dreamed about, visualized, wanted for quite some time. But one of my mantras that I wake up and say every day is I want the freedom to be me. I want the freedom to dictate my day. I want the freedom to be able to move around and do what I want to do. Right. And so that's why I don't do commissioned work anymore. I just make whatever I want to make, because commissioned work was pigeonholing me into this not being able to control what I do every day.
Right. Right.
And so I got into this kind of tug of war, and I'm like, can I really do this full expansion and move into this facility and grow the business to be able to now export to all these other countries, but still maintain the freedom to be me?
Mhm.
And so where I'm at right now is trying to visualize what that looks like so that I can put that out there so that that transition becomes seamless.
Mhm.
Right. So there's a constant growth and a constant ebb and flow where, yes, you get to that point where you've achieved what you visualized, but the trick to it is not to just stay there and wallow in that comfort. For you to
Interesting.
grow, you have to be constantly expanding. And I'll give you a small example again. I've had in the past. So when I started Live Edge Furniture, certainly I was not the first person in Jamaica doing Live Edge Furniture, but I definitely was the first person to take it to the level that it's at now. And I've opened up the door for many others to follow through, which is amazing. And I'm thrilled to it. And I keep saying there's enough sun to shine for everybody.
Mhm.
Um, but what I get a lot of is, how do you feel? You don't see what's her name copying your work, and you don't see what's his name doing exactly what you do, and you don't see this and you don't see that. And I'm looking at these people and I know that they mean well. And I'm like, that's a limited mindset, because they're making three small little side tables with hairpin legs that, yes, they may look like mine, but while they're doing those three hairpin legs, I'm thinking about how I'm going to fill a 40-foot container to go to LA by next year.
Right.
How am I going to get my work into Design Miami? So I'm my that's your limited mindset, that you're thinking that it's an issue for me, where I'm here thinking that's great that they're creating three tables with hairpin legs, because maybe that would propel them into something bigger and greater, like how it did for me.
Mhm.
And I'm here thinking, well, all of what I've done so far is just really been a dress rehearsal for where I want to go. And so it's a constant expansion, like constant, what next, where can I get to, what's out there that I can really take a hold of and take this small Jamaican girl into this vast world that's out there. And yeah.
That as you're talking, I envision you like you're literally harnessing energy. You're harnessing it and putting it back out there, and it is limitless.
Limitless. I tell everybody,
Limitless.
I was like, guys, I know that we live on this small, beautiful, amazing island, but you have to understand the expansiveness of this world, right? There's so much out there. Even for us Kingstonians, when I moved to Trelawney, they're like, what are you doing in Trelawney? I'm like, guys, I know you think that the island starts and stops in Kingston, but there is so much going on the North Coast. Again, it's just that expansive mindset that you have, that makes, you know, that energy come back into your space, and for you to be able to, you know, grow from it. And then now, how do you use that now to teach others, you know, and have them also learn that there is more to life than just what you see in front of you, because the world is so vast. There's so much out there, you know.
So I've also heard you say in interviews that you have a greater vision. Can you talk to us about that?
So that would go right back into my my Jamaicanness. I like to say, I'm 8th generation Jamaican on both my mother and father's side. So I literally do feel like I was born out of Jamaican soil, and there's no way that I could be who I am and do what I do if I was from any other part of the world. Like, I really do feel like a big part of my purpose is the fact that I am born here. And because of that, like, I feel like part of my purpose is using mermaid designs, using this woodworking as a catalyst into being able to be seen. Because if I had just gotten up and said, oh, I'm going to teach, or I'm going to go and stand on a stage and tell people how to manifest, or, you know, any of these things, I would have not necessarily had an audience. It's because I've been able to do what I've done, walk that path, that I feel like that's a catalyst now for me to be able to teach people how to find their purpose, and then to utilize that in a collective way to basically make Jamaica a better place. I know it sounds very hairy-fairy, and people always say that all the time, but I feel like there's so much creative energy on this island. And I'll never forget when I was in that transitional phase, trying to figure out what I was supposed to do. I had shut the agency down. A friend of mine has this NGO called Plant Jamaica, and he needed some volunteers to help at a school. He had gotten all these leftover decorations from Digicel, and he wanted to take them to different schools in the inner cities for them to use it to decorate their schools. And I volunteered for one close to Fleet Street, and I was there with them, and I was watching these kids who had never been exposed to any of this sort of stuff before, and to see their faces light up, and to see how their brains work, and how they took something that they've never had experience with before and what they made from it. And I was in such awe of these kids, and I'm like, look at this. Look at the opportunity that this little box has given these kids. Now imagine if they're put into, into training or given better opportunities to be able to harness this creativity, how much we'd be able to, contribute to this world, just like you say, into track and Bob to music. Like, there's so much more, there are so much other entities and industries that we could be contributing to if we could give these kids a chance. And so I kind of feel like, even if it's something small and remote, where I start off in a community in Trelawney, and I just start off really slow and just try and build a movement, but definitely there is a greater calling for me to be able to teach and to be able to support the creative industry in a different way or in a better way. That's one aspect. The second aspect is the trees, the mass destruction of our trees.
Yeah.
You know, I'm definitely the only person on the island that rescues trees. Nobody does that. They may pass a cut branch or a cut trunk and put it in their car and drive off with it. But like, I actively get calls when construction sites have to clear trees, or people are clearing trees for roadworks, farming, it's destroying the foundation of a house, or it's fallen on its own. And I spend a lot of my personal money rescuing these trees to prevent them from being dumped. And, you know, I get the comment all the time where like, oh, but you're so lucky you get your raw materials are free. You know, you're making all of this profit from all of these trees when you create something and sell it back. And I'm like, I create something and sell it back to fund being able to rescue these trees.
Mm-hmm.
Because to rescue a tree costs me so much money. You know, just last week I rescued a massive guango trunk, and it was a trunk that fell off of that guango tree must be about 300 years old.
Wow.
It's in the Kingston 8 area, and a large branch fell, and luckily it fell at night and it never hit anybody or any cars or anything, and I was able to rescue it, and it was quite a feat to get it, and I ended up having to use a large wrecker to pull it up, and the cost involved in trying to just remove that one piece is tremendous. And then I have to take it, I have to store it in my workshop, I have to dry it out, I have to debark it, I have to fumigate it for termites, I have to, you know, the sanding and the grinding and all of the work that's done to it. At the end of the day, I can't charge back, especially in Jamaica, what it would take to recoup the money and the time that I've spent to get that tree to where it is now. And that's okay, because that's a big part of what I do. It's being able to sell what I sell in order for me to take that money to go back and to save another tree, and not the other way around.
I think it's because there's always so much construction and stuff going on in Jamaica. It is good at least to know that those trees are being used in some way, especially because they're so old, you know?
Listen,
they are so old.
I rescued a tree from Police Officers Club. It's actually Ronnie Williams Entertainment Center. The manager that was managing at the time felt that the tree was in the way, and that he felt like he was getting a lot of requests for venue rentals, and that the tree was just in the middle of the field. He never saw the vision of, oh, I can rent the space and use the tree as the anchor point where they can hang lights from it and decorations and shade. And he never saw.
Ooh, I think I lost you. Oh, okay, now you're back.
Sorry.
Yeah. So he never saw the beauty of the tree.
Right. So he never understood the beauty of the tree. For him, it was just in the way. He cut it down. And this tree was probably about 200 or so years old. It was a tamarind tree. And luckily for me, I got a call from somebody who said, you got to race over there and try rescue this tree. It's insane. It's so beautiful. And I did. And it costed me a fortune. And I not just only got the tree, but I also got the roots. I was able to get quite a bit of the roots, which were huge. They had started to light a fire in the tree because there were bees in the tree. So parts of the tree was already burnt. I still took the whole tree. And at the end of the day, I probably got over 100 pieces from that tree, that one tree. And that tree could have easily just never seen the light of day. It could have, you know, for the beauty that it put back into so many different spaces across the island, to know that could easily have not happened, you know. And if I rescue one tree, there's 100 trees being dumped. I'm getting a very, very, very small portion of that. So part of it is trying to get the government to mandate and put in laws to prevent trees from being dumped, not necessarily being cut. Maybe if they're past a certain height, they have to get permission to be cut. And once they are given permission, they have to be cut and they have to be sent to this particular facility, right? And then all of that wood is then harvested, either sold back to the public, used for Heart Institute or for training institutions to train, guys and girls about woodworking. And it's just a sustainable cycle.
Yeah.
I would love to be able to get help for that. I have been trying to get through to the minister who's in charge of that portfolio. Haven't been able to get through to him. I certainly have been in conversations with forestry department, but forestry department's mandate is to plant trees.
Right. Not rescue.
Not rescue. And so, there's a part of it too where I do need to set up an NGO and get external help in order to push this forward, because right now I'm a one-man band doing everything.
Right.
So yeah,
I think what you're describing is really like a cycle. It's like the replanting, the rescuing, the appreciation. Underlying all of that is a basic appreciation for trees and the value that they add to our lives, which, given the recent report, we should probably all be aware of that now. I mean, I hope that they do this in Jamaica, because I keep thinking about Haiti as an example.
I know. Yeah.
And that scares literally the crap out of me.
Yeah.
Seriously.
I know. And I mean, you should see luckily where my apartment is in Kingston, I'm in Manor Park and I overlook the Norbrook Mountains.
Yeah.
So I am seeing all mostly green, right? So there's a lot of green that I get to see every day when I'm in Kingston. But when you're on the ground and you're driving around, you realize there's just a lot of trees being taken down, especially big old trees. And they're sliced up into small chunks to go on a truck to get dumped,
Yeah, I am well aware of that. My parents live in St. Thomas, and our house is in a valley. So when I was growing up, I would look up into the mountains up at like Surge Island and where that big dam is, the Reggae Falls, and it was just like lush, verdant green. And now there are no trees there, so it's like dry, and they're flooding, landslides, all of this sort of a thing all the time. So I hope you're able to get that going. I know
it's a hard battle. It's gonna be an uphill battle, but somebody has to fight it, right?
Yeah, so absolutely. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your work, right? You've mentioned Live Edge a couple times. For those of us who don't know what Live Edge, working with a Live Edge is, can you explain that to us?
Well, the truth is that Live Edge is basically when you cut the trunk and you leave the natural edge of the wood, as opposed to squaring it off like you would get in a lumberyard, right? So you go to a lumberyard, you're buying lumber in planks, and they're cut at a certain width and a certain length. Live Edge is basically leaving the natural organic shape of the wood and slicing it like that, and then utilizing those organic edges in your design. So I do a combination of Live Edge and I'm on a different design path right now. I don't do a lot of Live Edge anymore. I tend to, once a lot of people start to get into something, it's time for me to move on. Yeah. And so, I try to stay about 2 to 3 years ahead of the trend. So like what I was designing 2 to 3 years ago, a lot of people are now doing that on the island, which is a good sign for me, because it means that I'm on the right path where I am staying ahead of the trend, know? And so right now I'm into like very rounded, clean edges. But the wood is still very natural. I very rarely stain my wood. The only time I will put a stain on anything that I make is if the wood is badly damaged from rot or from water damage or termite, termite trails. They leave these little black pock marks. And so if that's the case, sometimes I will do staining. And I'll also do another method called shoshugiban, which is when you burn the wood. It's a
Oh.
Japanese technique where you torch the wood, and you char the wood, and then there's a process that you clean off that char, and then it stays black. And it's very cool. And I do that process as well. But for the most part, I leave the wood in a natural state, and I don't use anything glossy. So all of my finishes make the wood have a slight sheen, but a very natural element. I try to bring out the grain movement. When I cut my pieces, I tell people the magic starts with how I cut the tree. So that's why the process for me is very expensive. When I go to rescue a tree, I try to rescue the tree in pieces, in how I see the tree developing into a piece. So if there's a crook and I can see that becoming a nice console table against a wall, then I will cut it in that form. If I see a branch that's 17 feet long and I'm like, you know what, that would make an awesome chandelier, I try to cut it in that 17 and keep it in that natural form. And so, you know, that's why it's so difficult, because I'll need a big, massive, like the other day, I rescued a massive willow tree, and it took a huge crane truck to lift it. Right? So willow is extremely heavy and dense. And so that crane truck, I mean, was huge. And so there's a process to being able to create the art form that you want. It's expensive, but it's the art is seeing the beauty in the tree and how to now bring it back to life. I tell people it's turning the tree inside out.
Interesting.
You know,
yeah.
You see the tree, you know, standing up, you're admiring the blooms and the leaves and the way it's swaying in the breeze, and you know, just the awe, the beauty, and the majestic awe of this tree. But then when it's cut down, it's my job now to release its inner beauty, the part that you couldn't see before. Right? That becomes my job now. It's to showcase how amazing this tree can be for the next 50 years, you know. And so I rescued a tree that had fallen down in St. James in some heavy rains in 2017. And out of that trunk, it took 2 cranes to lift that trunk onto a flatbed. And out of that trunk, which I've still not finished with it yet, I have created a sculpture for AC Marriott, a huge sculpture.
It's gorgeous.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I've done about maybe 10 dining tables from it. One of those dining tables is the largest dining table I think that's been manufactured on the island.
Wow.
I'm about to do an Instagram post about it to ask people to help me to verify and to claim that I've made the largest dining table in Jamaica and possibly the Caribbean.
How long is it?
It's 18 feet long.
Yeah.
By 14 feet wide, 4 foot wide, but it's one slab.
Where is it intended to go?
It's in its forever home. It's in St. Anne, at the villa on the coast.
Wow.
It took 20 guys to lift it, and the base is its own art piece that's also from the same tree. So the base in itself is an art piece, and then you'll see it on my Mara.Harding Instagram post. I made that post and it got like 35,000 views.
Wow.
Yeah, something crazy. And then so the top for that now came from that tree, and that tree could have easily have been cut up, destroyed, left to rot, burnt. You know, people take little pieces here and there, but you know what I've been able to create from that rescued tree has been incredible.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And your creations, whenever I've looked at your videos, especially the drawing ones, the ones of you using the Sharpie, it seems as if you're downloading.
Like, I am.
You're like a vessel. So that is
Totally.
What's happening.
Absolutely. I'll go to a location, because sometimes when I was doing commission work, I would have designers come and commission pieces from me, but I would never know where they go. I don't know who the clients are. You know, they keep that very close to their chest. And so I'll walk into a villa or I'll go somewhere and I'll be like, wow, that table is amazing. And I'm running my hand on the table, and then I see my stamp,
It's yours.
my M my MM stamp. I'm like, I made this. And I'm looking at it like, and I'm like, oh my God, I made this table. But if you ask me to make the table again, I can't make it again.
Right.
That table was definitely channeled, and I made that table, sent it on its way, and I can't do it. I can't make that again.
Really?
It's an interest. It's like, when you hear authors talk about writing a book or a novel,
Mm-hmm.
and they get into that zone. There's actually a TEDx talk about it, and it's like, they feel like they're channeling all of these words, and they put it into a story, and then once it's done, and they can't get it back. It's a portal that closes off.
Exactly. Yeah.
And they can't get back into that portal again. And that's happened to me before. Like, I was like, oh my God, I want to create that resin piece, and that portal isn't open anymore. I can't do it. It's gone.
There's Elizabeth Gilbert wrote this book, Big Magic, and I think that's the whole premise of the book, like, or one of the things that she says, like, if that opportunity, she says, it's really interesting. She says, the opportunities present themselves, but if you don't listen, they go on to somebody else.
There you go.
Bingo. It's not lost. It just moves on to somebody else who's listening.
That is so funny, because there's a thing that I always say, and it's that the seed is planted in many people's minds.
Mm-hmm.
So when we think we have an idea that belongs to us, it's not our
Yes.
idea. That
Yes.
idea has been planted into about 10 people's brains. Who is the one that's going to germinate? Who is the one that's going to water that idea and bring it into fruition? And I always say that, because a lot of times I can tell you, for me, I will make something, and then I'll go online and I'll see almost the exact table
Mm-hmm.
from somewhere in some other far away country. And I'm like, look at that. We're not even in the same space, energetical space, yet still we're creating almost the identical pieces.
Yeah.
And it's the same, it goes back to the same thing. Or I'll have an idea that I want to create this, artistic village, and I want to do all of these things. And then I'll have a conversation with somebody, and it's like they're taking the ideas right out of my head, to the point where I'm like, did I write that down somewhere and they saw my notes?
Right.
But it's because that seed has been planted in many people's minds, and it's who's gonna be the first to bring it to life.
Right. And it makes me think about collaboration too, and connection, and how important that is. So I want to close off by asking you some kind of fun questions. Some of them you've already answered, but I'll give you an opportunity to add more stuff if you want to. So you've described some of your practice. I guess, can I call it a spiritual practice?
Absolutely.
Okay.
For sure.
Yeah, you described swimming in the Martha Brae and being amongst the trees. So what are other non-negotiable practices that you do to keep you grounded and to keep those creative juices flowing?
I think the ones that you mentioned are what I do. It's being in a body of water, but I'm a water baby. Like, my astrology sign is I'm almost 100% water.
Wow.
So when I'm not in water, I can't function.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why the wood is such a yin to that yang, because I'm so much water that the wood helps me to balance.
Right.
And I learned that from Alina.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
Yeah. And so for me, my non-negotiable practice is I have to be in a body of water. I do a lot of my manifesting in water. And if you think about it, water is one of the biggest conductors. Like, there's a lot there with water.
Yes.
Even if you're not in a place where you can get into a river or an ocean or anything like that, do it in your bath. Like, do it in your shower, and And so water plays a huge significant role in my manifestation, in my creative process, in keeping me grounded. Massive, right? Practically anything that I affirm in water ends up happening.
Really?
Right? And I'll just give you a quick example. So about 2 months ago, I started affirming that I wanted to be recognized, right? Because part of being in this journey as a woman in a man's world is you don't get recognition. And the men try to claim the space, even though you're the one that owns the space, they don't want you to claim it. And I face a lot of that here, right? I face a lot of egos. And so one of the things that I started to affirm was, I want to be recognized, you know, and this week my phone was ringing and ringing and ringing and ringing. And when I'm in the workshop, I don't answer my phone. I leave. If I never had to answer a phone for the rest of my life, I'd be so thrilled.
Yeah.
And so this number kept calling and calling, and I kept sending messages. Please send me a text. Please text me. Please WhatsApp me. I'm unable to answer the phone. Eventually, they see the text, and I get a message to say, "Hey, I'm such and such a person. I would like to nominate you for this prestigious award that is basically," he says, "the Nobel Peace Prize for this region, the Caribbean."
Wow.
He's like, you know, each country has to nominate somebody, and we'd like to nominate you as a Jamaican. And it's massive. I can't even tell you how massive this, if I was to win it, what it would mean for me.
Wow.
But it's wild that phone call came. And that's another thing about putting it out there, visualizing exactly what you want and letting it go. Because this call came out of the blue. I didn't even know this award existed. And as I said, it's massive. And the monetary, the prize that you get is huge.
Oh, wow.
It's quite significant. Yes.
That's incredible.
And it would do such amazing, it would propel my whole NGO into another direction, the rescuing of the trees, and being able to utilize it for training and education, right? So it's a big deal. But it just goes to back to the point of the manifesting. It came in as a result of me asking to be recognized. You couldn't want another, more of an answer.
It's pretty specific. Yeah. And it's pretty on point.
Specific. Then another quick example, I got a call from a production company that's shooting a pilot for HGTV. They're coming to Jamaica and they want me to be in the pilot as the person in Jamaica that's creating these things.
That's an excellent fit. Oh my God, it's amazing. The exposure there would be awesome.
It would be awesome. And so just to go back to your question, is no compromising. I have to be in that water. That's my grounding. That's my affirmations. No compromise. I have to say my appreciations every day, why I'm so blessed, what I appreciate, how lucky I am. I say my appreciations for all the guys that work in my team, just everybody, to the backhoe guy, to everybody that allows me to be able to live my dream every day. So that's another non-compromising ritual that I do. Exercise is another big one. Self-care. I'm not great at the medical stuff, and I am getting older. I'm 47 this year, and so that part I need to fix. But the self-care is important, especially as a woman that's doing so much. It's so important to eat healthy, exercise, get enough sleep, have your spiritual practice, and I'm not probably even 60% in some of those areas, but I do exercise every day.
You do.
That is a ritual. Self-care is a major one. Maintaining some silence and listening, and and keeping a circle around you too. I have never been, I've never really been a chick in that way. Like, I don't keep girlfriends.
Mm,
All of my friends growing up into my adulthood has always been males, right? I've
okay.
always had all my close friends as males. And about 2 years ago, my cousin started a book club, and invited about 7 females, and they've become my tribe now, where we really it's more about a spiritual tribe than a book
Mhm,
club.
mhm.
We talk about each other's journeys and how we can help each other. I'm the only one with kids so big. All of them have kids that are 12 and under. So
Okay.
they're even though we're all the same age, they started out late and I started out early. So both my kids are like almost done with university, where they still have kids in prep school.
Mhm.
But we still try to help each other. And so I would say to that is to definitely have a tribe. And it doesn't have to be a girl tribe. It can just be a tribe that you can rely on, or get advice about something that you're into,
Mhm.
whether it's your passion for cooking, or for reading, cycling, running, whatever your passions are. Is to try and find a little club or clique or group that you can belong to. It's so important to have people,
Yeah,
especially now with COVID, where you're so isolated.
absolutely.
you know
Absolutely. So I have a funny question. Can you tell me a fact about yourself that would surprise others to learn?
hmm Facts, let's see.
Or just something.
um this might not surprise people, but I growing up, I questioned what the purpose of adults were in my life.
Hmm.
I didn't understand their purpose. I felt like all they were there to do was to tell me no all the time, and to suppress me and keep me, from expansion and being who I was truly meant to be. And this was a young, like 5, 6, 7. And
You must have
so
been a joy to raise.
I was an absolute joy. I was an absolute joy. Yeah, I was very early on with the rebellion. I just didn't understand the purpose of a mother, father, or a teacher, or any of that. Like, they just stood in my way from being who I wanted to be.
Right. But
Yeah,
even back then, right? Based on our whole conversation, even back then, you were that independent creative spirit.
totally,
Mm.
totally. Being suppressed and not knowing, not understanding, and just being very despondent. Like, why? What is this all about? What have I come into this lifetime to do and to be, when all I get around me is no, 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 you
Right.
can't, no, you can't. Yeah, that was, I never got into drugs, or I never, I never manifested my issues that way. I think I more channeled it into sports
Mm-hmm.
and activity, which was
Mm-hmm.
great because it could have gone either way, And so I
Yeah.
played water polo for Jamaica. That's a fun fact.
Yeah. That is a
Um,
fun fact.
yeah, I represented Jamaica in water polo. I danced professionally.
Mm.
So I was part of a professional troupe where we danced at we performed at Little Theatre and all over, other theatres.
Do you still dance?
I No, I would like to start back, but I don't know if the old bones can manage it. But I would like to start back. I had another friend who was in the company with me, and she just started back, and we're the same age. She
Mm-hmm.
never had kids, but doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about it if I can find some time.
Mhm.
I played football, soccer. I was as a captain for a club side, so that was in my early 20s between having kids. Um, so I played football, danced, played water polo. Those are 3 fun facts.
Yeah,
Probably
that's a
probably
lot of
kept me out of trouble.
out of trouble. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So how can people contact you? What's the best way to reach you, to connect? They cannot contact you. You would rather if no one contacts you.
Let me tell you, I need to make some serious money so I can hire a personal assistant that can answer my phones for me.
Yeah.
So the best way to contact me is probably through Instagram Messenger.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, Tamara, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been so amazing, which I knew it would be because I think you're incredibly inspiring. Keep doing what you're
Thank you
doing. We
so
need more
much.
people in the world like you. I know that sounds cliche, but it's absolutely true.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity, and you've been an awesome interviewer.
Ah, thank you.
Yes.
I'm new at this myself. This is really outside of my
It's
comfort zone.
naturally, it's so natural to you. I'm
Thank
telling
you.
you.
Thank you.